Okay, so it's 10 p.m. here. It's 3 p.m. in Europe right now. So I just wanted to say, hey, everyone, and welcome and warm welcome to our webinar, Top Strategies to Attract Global Talents. I am Sophia, the brand and content marketing manager at Jobelon, and I'm also a future work expert. So I love to talk about recruitment and everything that has to do with a futuristic context. And I'm here and joined by the amazing Masha Karachun. Welcome. Do you mind just saying something short about who you are and what you do at Remote?
Of course. Thank you so much for the introduction. So as you mentioned, Sophia, my name is Masha, and I'm the talent acquisition manager at Remote. So I'm originally from Belarus, and I relocated to Poland a few years ago. So you can see that exactly we're joining this webinar from very different, sides of the planet, I would say. Yeah, and I'm really excited to be here. And thank you so much for joining and for prioritizing that for your day.
Of course, of course. So we have a full schedule and short of time. So we're going to dive right in.
Let's do that.
Yeah, we have a super exciting topic today, and just wanted to give you a little brief so you know what's about to come. So today we are going to dive deeper into how to leverage the talent shortage and expand your global talent pool. We're going to talk about common mishaps that prevents people and acquisition from successfully attracting global talent, and of course Remote and your best practices on how to navigate global hiring and roadblocks that you have to face in terms of finding these talents. But before we get started, I just wanted to quickly jump in case you don't or haven't heard about Jobelon. So Jobelon is a modern and user-friendly hiring software or platform where we help recruiters and hiring managers all around the globe to create outstanding candidate experiences and attractive employer brands. And we also, of course, like to talk about everything, including talent acquisition, recruitment, and so forth. And I'll now give the mic to Masha, who will give a short one on Remote for those of you who don't know.
Yep, definitely. So if you're not familiar with us, Remote enables other companies, big and small, to employ talent globally. And we do it by, let's say, removing the complexity of global employment and take care of the whole employee life cycle, which includes things like global payroll, benefits, stock, taxes, compliance, so everything that you can imagine. We do that to help you focus on things that matter.
Sweet. So let's dive into the topic. So 75% of companies are experiencing talent shortage. And I bet a majority of people tuning in, if not everyone, has experienced it themselves in one shape or another. So, but before we dive into how to solve this and how to overcome it, let's just start from the beginning and where it stems from. Masha, do you have any thoughts and ideas, input on the talent shortage and why it's here, and why are we struggling with this problem?
Yeah, I'm really happy that we start with that and kick off the webinar with this question, because I think when people talk about talent shortage, they usually talk about shortage in a particular area, right? So if you intend to hire a highly specialized individual in a very limited geography or very limited location, you will most certainly face talent shortage, right? So just to give you an example, to see if you can relate, if you work as a recruiter or a sourcer, and then you come to a kickoff meeting with your hiring manager, and they ask you that they would need to find a person with, let's say, X years of experience with XYZ qualifications in this particular area. It could be country or city, right? You'll probably give it a try, but then when you hit the wall, and you'll most probably hit the wall, you'll get back to your hiring manager and you'll ask either to drop some requirements, right? Or you will ask to expand the geography. And if it sounds familiar to any of you, please put a comment or like a plus in the comment area. But it means that if the expanding part is not possible. If you can't expand your geography, you'll probably need to sacrifice some of your requirements. And what happens, you literally end up hiring the best person who just happens to live in this area, right? Which is not ideal. And I'm not sure if you can relate, but I think it's very, very typical thing that we face, right? The challenge we face, but it doesn't have to be this way, right? Because with the growth of remote work, the barriers between the business and the talent, they are much lower. So it means that you can access truly global talent pool, which fundamentally changes the way how we see future of work, right? And how we work basically. And if I can just shortly quick on the second question, right? Because I would really, really like to comment on this misalignment with candidate expectations. Here, I would say, like, yeah, definitely. So if we talk about the growth of remote work from the candidate perspective, there is this realization, or I don't know, like change of mindset probably, that you do not need to be in a specific location to do your work, right? And what you do does not need to determine where you work and where you live. And this clearly dictates candidate expectations. So basically, as a business, you are not competing with only employers that are located in your immediate area, right? You are basically competing with the remote global companies who already adopted to this, let's say, new reality, right? And they offer, I don't know, fair compensation, benefits, everything. And on top, they offer flexibility. And I think it's a very big advantage, to be honest. And if I can quote our CEO, Job, future work is not about work, it's about freedom, right? So if you, as a business, you can't do that, I'm sorry, but you'll probably just lose and you'll just lag behind.
Right. Yeah, I've read a statistic the other day on, I don't know if I can recall it 100% correctly, but I remember it saying that people do choose freedom over a higher salary and, you know, perks that were usually commonly used pre-pandemic, but now it's switching. So freedom is one of the highest values that the people really value when it comes to their ideal workplace.
Yeah, definitely. So it's more like about this evolved candidate expectation even, right? So I think it's important to take care of that as a company.
Right. So do you think, because I'm thinking about companies that aren't really able to give that kind of freedom, like full flexibility, do you think there's other ways of giving more autonomy without, you know, because in some cases it might be that people have to be in certain time zones, or do you see another like perspective of looking at it when it comes to flexibility if you're not like,
I mean,
if you
like,
can't give full flexibility?
Here, basically, it means that if the global hiring is the way out for you, right? And if you can't do that, at least you try to come closer to that as much as possible, right? But at the same time, I think it's important to consider that as a company, because it's not just that when you do global hiring, you accelerate your talent pool. What you do is also you have this, like, switching to global hiring is also a growth hack for you as a company, right? Because you can enter new markets strategically. Again, you mentioned different time zones, right? Or you can diversify your team and bring more experience to the team. And it can be really, really good growth hack. And at the same time, I think if you consider at least that, there are at least two options that you can follow. So you can either figure out how to do it yourself, right? For example, all the nuances and all the challenges, let's say, of global employment, and try to see at least the location that you can cover, right? Disclaimer here, it's hard. It's not easy, right? So if you want to do that yourself, you need to be sure and ready to allocate, I don't know, resources, efforts, time to tackle these problems, like I don't know, costs, legal risk, compliance, and stuff like that. Or you can probably work with the employer of record, like remote, and this employer of record will be able to take care of these global employment related things, right? So you can actually focus on just finding and attracting talent. So I would say that I would definitely advocate for that. But if you can't do that, like all global hiring, I would at least suggest that you try that, because it's not just about hiring and talent, it's much more for you and has more benefits for you as a business.
Definitely. And the less focus we have to put on administer stuff, the more we can actually focus on finding the right talent.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Sweet. So in terms of navigating and leveraging the candidate or the talent shortage, what are your thoughts there, and how do you at remote work to tackle the talent shortage?
So basically, we do global hiring, right? And I know that when we talk about global hiring, you imagine that this kind of removes the problem of candidate shortage, right? Which is true. But at the same time, when you do the global hiring, it presents other challenges to you, which is even funny, right? And when preparing for this webinar, I was thinking about like most common things that you can consider to be a blocker, or like a challenge that you need to face as a company when you do global hiring. And I realized that some are very like basic and obvious, right? And some are less obvious. So I'll probably just quickly jump on the more obvious thing, because if we talk about that, I would definitely say that a lot of companies struggle with not having internal expertise, right? That means that they do not have the team who is able to tackle all global hiring challenges, right? Like identifying the talent or attracting talent and stuff like that. And they do not think about strategy and don't have enough data to support that, because it means that when you have the entire world as your talent pool, right, it can come to this decision paralysis, if I may say. So it means that you are not even sure where to start and how to start and why to start there, right?
Yeah.
And if we talk about, let's say, less obvious things, which are very curious, at least as I can see that, right, is that you do have the whole world as your talent pool, but a lot of companies fall into this loop of hiring from the same company, same location, same background, because you probably already experienced some success with that company, right? So it becomes your go-to strategy, which is very tricky, because if you adopt this strategy for all your hires in the future, because it basically it's a trap of limiting potential of your teams, right? All the teams, and excluding other voices. And on top of that, I would say that a very difficult but important thing that you need to consider when you consider even global hiring is the difference between culture fit and value add. Because when you hire globally, you are exposed to different cultures, right, all over the world. And the question is how you go around all these differences, right? How you go around all these cultures. And many companies claim to have these, let's say, like unified approach, right, on how they treat candidates, how they treat employees, which very often, unfortunately, means that it's your ability to fit within some kind of norm or, I don't know, existing company culture, which in many cases turns out to be, I don't know, let's say US centric or European centric or some other location centric, right? So you're just supposed to fit in. And if you ask me, this is definitely not ideal, because if you face so many different cultures and so many different backgrounds, instead of just assuming that we are all the same, you probably need to acknowledge that and also manifest that we're different, right? And we have different cultures and backgrounds. And you make sure that your hiring strategy is focused not on assessing this individual background, right? That it's connected to culture and location you come from and stuff like that, but it's actually focused on assessing what expertise this individual brings to the table, right? Or how they can be successful within your company, and if they actually are the value add. And we come to another point that you really need to have the values. And I think this is really, unfortunately, it's missed by the company. At least from my experience, I can mention that values are often on paper, but they are not in your real work life, right? They are not operationalized. And if we talk about, again, global employment and this evolved candidate experience that we already talked about, it means that people do not stick or do not try to find a company where they can have, I don't know, Friday drinks in the office, right? And as a remote company, you can't offer that. You can't offer these, like, you know, catch-ups in the office, but you need to make sure that you do have a strong culture and mission, because people do prefer that, and they prefer to stick to the company with the values, right? And the values they can align to, and the mission they are passionate about, So I think this part is often missed, and this is the very important part that you need to have as a company to be able to attract talent globally.
I love that. It's super interesting about that. When we talk about cultural fit, is usually it's all connected to unconscious or and biased recruitment, and how we tend to like people that are similar to us. And as recruiters, we tend to, like, oh, you went to the same school as me, and therefore there's some kind of familiarity that makes us unconsciously like them more. So when it comes to global recruitment, we have to break down those barriers when it comes to culture and what does that mean for us. And like you're saying, instead focus on the value part, and because that's the thing that actually brings us together, and the thing that we can always fall back on. But that and the global hiring as well enables more diversity, and also the fact that we need to work on the inclusion parts. So I really love that you brought that up.
Yeah, and you also mentioned about this like same people, right, that you bring. I think it's especially tricky for smaller companies, let's say small startups, because usually you rely a lot on referrals, which is an amazing thing. We do love referrals, but at the same time, if people who already work for a company bring people from the same background and same experience, it means that technically you're building a company of same type of people, same type of folks, right? That's why you really want to balance all your resources, like inbound, outbound, referrals, and whatnot.
Yeah, good point. Definitely. So let's jump on to the next one. So, okay, so we talked about the talent shortage and things that we need to think about when it comes to overcoming this, and also being more aware of our own biases and the way we look at our company culture, values, and be more open-minded in terms of what type of people we're bringing in. So what are the biggest roadblocks that you think stand in the way of employees and their next great global hire or international hire?
Yeah, I think I can basically echo what I mentioned before, because things that I mentioned are really important for you to consider when you just have this global strategy, right? So I would definitely highlight the team, like the internal expertise that you have, right? Then proper strategy and proper data to support this strategy. Then all these mishaps that we mentioned about like bringing same people, right? And not being intentional or strategic about your strategy, right? And also everything that's around this culture and value, right? When companies consider hiring people, they often talk about this employee value proposition, right? That stands for compensation, benefits, career opportunities, culture, and stuff like that. And I think what's really missed is that value part that you offer, right? And on a practical side, usually there is no knowledge or not enough knowledge on meaningful benefits that you offer, for example, right? Because in simple words, you can't use a particular benefit to attract talent in location A if this benefit makes no sense to them locally, right? So you should be really, really strategic and intentional about your value proposition with all the part that, it covers.
Super, yeah. Totally agree. And when it comes to putting out hiring strategy, what are your thoughts on like what's important to think about when we're setting the strategy, and especially when it comes to global, because it's easy that we know our global or not global, we know our local candidate pool, we know kind of the websites that we're putting out our job ads, like it's more like well known for us, but when it comes to like putting ourselves out there globally, it's a whole new world, and it's a big world. It can be quite complex to navigate in, people behaving differently, people applying for jobs in a different way. And so where do you start in that nest of global hiring?
Yeah, I think here it's important to consider it as like two bigger things, right? Because you really want to know how you plan that, right? What kind of strategy you're going to develop to reach this talent and attract this talent all over the world. But at the same time, I think it's super important before you jump to that, to even think, like before all the practicalities, to think about why we even talk about this global strategy, right? Because as we talk, global hiring means that your talent pulls the whole world, right? So
Yeah.
I can definitely agree that it means that you can find your talent faster, easier, and that's it, right? But instead of just using this advantage to hire your talent easy and faster, I would really love all of us and all the companies we represent to think how we can use it, how we can use this advantage responsibly. And instead of just using this to hire easier and faster, again, as I mentioned, to think why and how. And I can't believe that I'm about to quote Uncle Ben from Spider-Man when we talk about hiring strategies, but with great power comes great responsibility, right? So imagine you have this opportunity to hire globally, right? So how do you use that? First, to make your company a better place and more diverse and more inclusive place to work, right? And then having this advantage on your hand, how you set the bar for other companies, right? How you bring fair opportunities out there to the whole world, and how you build this better and more inclusive workplace. And I know it's probably very like high level interpretation of the questions on my end, right? But at the same time, if you consider yourself to be a modern and to be a progressive company, I believe we really need to have this question in mind at all times, and to first align and reflect on those hows and whys, right? Before you can actually come to actual hiring strategy and plan that around your company, for example. Yeah, but on top of this like abstract and high level thing, I can definitely share some, let's say, best practices that we developed at Remote, in case that could be helpful.
Definitely, we are eager to hear.
Awesome, awesome. So yeah, if we talk about best practices, again, I try to align them to the blockers and the challenges that we already discussed, right? And I could probably highlight, let's say, 4 major like blocks or elements that you probably need to take into account, and also describe how we managed to do that at Remote. And number 1 would be building a diverse team distributed over multiple time zones. And we actually managed to build that in-house. And by diversity here, I mean that you literally have the team of experts whose combined experience and knowledge make it possible to tackle any challenge that comes with global hiring, right? And with different time zone coverage, it means that you can, first of all, provide better candidate experience, right? Because you can actually adjust, your timing, the interview for other people to feel comfortable, to feel prepared, and also be successful. But at the same time, on top of this, like small practicality, right? You are showing to your future talent, to your future hire, that they can join from anywhere on this planet, right? And they can be successful and they can contribute to a company development regardless of their time zone. So you just show them that you don't need to be in, let's say, X location or X time zone to be seen and to be valued at Remote. I think it's super important. And the third part, like on this team composition, right, and team diversity, I also think that we try to bring a lot of representation on the hiring team. And here I don't only say like recruiters and sources, right? I also say the whole hiring team, so everybody who is part of the process. And it helps to not just tell that we care about diversity and inclusion, right? It actually helps to show how we care about that, right? And I think it's important also to have these representations across all levels. So yeah, that would be like the first block, let's say. Then the second one, I would say that strategy and extensive research. And here, I'm not sure if you're not a fan of data, you're not going to like that, but here it's all about data, to be honest. Like what we do, we first of all collect all the insights about current team composition and the team diversity, the team that we're hiring for, right? And we need to decide how diversity looks for this particular team. Then we take into account the business needs, of course, right? And what specific challenges this particular hire will be exposed to and will be expected to solve. And with those 2 things, you try to understand what talent you're looking for. And then you research on where this talent is located, what are the communities, companies, and stuff like that it belongs to, right? And how to attract them. And then next, after that, so it's like a layered strategy, I would say, you translate all your findings into practicalities, like I don't know, how you write the job description, how you write your adverts to attract people, right? How you make it inclusive, how you do the posting, filtering applications, how you balance inbound and outbound talent, right? And how you build your sourcing strategy to make sure that you actually intentionally building the diverse team. So this is the two, but I've been talking a lot, so maybe you have any follow-up questions before I jump into number 3.
Yeah, I'm super curious about like how the concrete stuff. So like in terms of the job ad, for example, do you have any concrete tips that someone could take away like straight away and implement on how to, for example, make it more inclusive or more global friendly, if you may say so?
Yeah, definitely. I think first of all, it's important to have to know the difference between job description and job advert, right? Because what we have in remote, we use job description to specifically highlight all the responsibilities and requirements for this particular hire, right? But job advert serves the purpose of attracting people, right? And that's how we need to be very mindful and inclusive in this activity, let's say, right? Because for example, we know that data shows that women apply to jobs when they can see that they are, let's say, 100% matching, right? And then males would be, say, they would apply when they just match like 80% of the responsibilities, right? And again, you can say that this is how society is, right? But what we do at Remote, we try to be really intentional and try to look deeper and see how we can also use that to make the advert more appealing to, let's say, women, right? How we can make sure that it's inclusive. And there are a lot of like small applications that you can just basically run your tech through and see what language is probably not inclusive, right? Or maybe you want to get rid of I don't know, number of years of experience and stuff like that. So you just try to see all those small bits to make sure that you're not just putting out there and hope for the best, right? But you actually try to make sure that this talent applies.
Right. I would love to link that afterwards in the email. So we're going to send out the recording afterwards. So for anyone who wants to, get concrete tools, we'll definitely link them.
Yeah, definitely.
After. Yeah. So I'm seeing that we're kind of running out of time, and this is the question that we just jumped into. So I will actually jump straight into 3 quick tips on how to strengthen your global hiring strategy.
Yeah, definitely. And again, if anybody has any follow-up questions about that, because indeed we're running out of time, we can tackle that async. So you can just contact me anytime. I'll be happy to share. But of all the things that I mentioned, right, and that I was planning to mention also, I would definitely highlight these 3 things, 3 tips how to strengthen your global hiring strategy. And well, tip number 0 would be to actually have a strategy around that, right? I think we agree that this is super important.
That's a good starting point.
Yeah, I think so. But on top of that, I would definitely say this internal expertise, right? And I think I covered that pretty well. Then the second part would be awareness and intentionality. And when I say that, I mean everything, like how you work with bias, right? How you acknowledge that within the team, how you develop like unified and unique hiring process for yourself, right? How you make sure that your team is trained for that. And how you develop, I don't know, standardized kickoff documents, some interview questions, scorecards, feedback system, and stuff like that, to make sure that you are actually all aligned and that the outcome of the hiring process does not depend on individuals, I don't know, preference bias and stuff like that. And the last part would be transparency and, setting your candidate up to success within your hiring process. What I mean here is that, let's say, remote is a very unique workplace, right? So what we want to make sure, we want to provide accessible interview process for everybody, because you want to be sure that people are enabled, that you consider people of different cultural backgrounds, neurodiversity, people who need some adjustment in the process, right? And you want to be as transparent as possible before you talk to them. So what we do, for example, we share some interviewing tips and how it, like interviewing it remote looks like in our public company handbook. So you can literally go online and you can check what we have there, and we usually link our candidates to this, like direct our candidates to this resource, because we want them to shine, we want them to feel successful and be enabled. And it's also a win-win, right? Because you offer a good candidate experience, but also you have motivated and more qualified talent. So yeah, I think those like 3.5 tips would be probably a major thing that I would like to share.
I love that, because candidate experience, it's not a one size fit all. So it's easy to create a standard one, but then everyone is different, and especially as like the topic we're talking about today is, you know, hiring globally, which means that it's a lot of different cultures and a lot of different types of people. So therefore we need to personalize it and make sure that everyone feels like comfortable and respected and seen during that process in the best possible way.
Yeah, I can 100% agree.
Amazing. So the time has run faster than it's ever been in my life.
That's true. I get too excited. Sorry.
I saw the time and I was like, it doesn't make any sense. Like we just started. But so unfortunately, we don't really have time for Q&A. So we actually received some questions beforehand. So I'm thinking that the plan B here is we're going to answer all of your questions in an email afterwards.
Yeah.
So for everyone who asked before and during this session, don't worry, we'll get back to you shortly. But first of all, thank you so much for everyone who's been tuning in today. And more importantly, thank you, Masha, for sharing your valuable knowledge with us. So we'll be sending out this recording in case you want to recommend it to a friend or a coworker who might be interested in this topic. And when we send out the recording, we'll send out some resources as well, refer to the things that we talked about during this session. So yeah, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or to Masha. Here you have her LinkedIn and her email. So yes. Thank you for everyone.
So much.
And
it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining.